If you want to grow your business, heal.
I resisted breathwork for a while because I didn't know what it was. It really wasn't until I met you, and you are an entrepreneur. You are the embodiment of the community that we've built here.
The breath just takes you right there to the emotion that's really been buried. And I was like, whoa.
The places where we do feel that big emotion come up, where most of our triggers come up, we could think all day long, oh, that has nothing to do with my business. But it does.
And when energy is leaking in one area of your life, it affects all areas of your life.
I want to talk about love. That hasn't been your default to be the partner that you want to be.
I was not expecting that.
Surprise. Today we're talking about how to unblock your purpose. And I'm sitting down with my good friend, Francesca Sipma, founder of Mastry, creator of HypnoBreathwork, and I mean, honestly, I think just one of the most brilliant, badass women that I know. I mean, your work has been featured in Forbes, in Entrepreneur, and you're working with some of the highest achievers, high performers in the world and transforming their lives through breathwork. So we're going to dive into it today. I'm so excited you're here.
I'm more excited than you are.
So we are fresh off of one of my retreats where you are now a staple at any events that I do, because the number one thing that I get feedback on is the breathwork sessions that we do with you and how quickly it helps people to really unblock. And you started yesterday with one of the most powerful statements I think I've ever heard. And I want you to start this conversation by sharing that too.
If you want to grow your business, heal. If you want to grow your business, you have to heal the inner child that felt unworthy. You have to debunk those limiting beliefs that have kept you small. You have to go into those shadows that have been hidden. And you really have to expand your capacity to hold success and abundance and joy. So I think so much in these retreats and in the coaching world, we're focused on business strategies and tactics and information and knowledge, which we absolutely need. But if you keep coming up against that ceiling, it's because there's a past wound or some unresolved pain that needs to be looked at so that you can free up your energy and get that clarity in those next action steps.
It's so true. And I spent years really trying to get to the next level through strategy. And it worked a bit. And there came to a point where I felt blocked would be the best way to describe it. And through finding your work, through finding a healing journey of my own, I am now realizing that was the piece that I was missing. So I want to dive into your story because you are the living embodiment of your work also. Take us back to your days living in New York, working for some of the top advertising agencies in the world. And from the external world's viewpoint, one might have said, you're crushing it.
Yeah. And I felt that at moments, you know. I think I was working at Anomaly, which in my opinion was the top agency in the world. They had just won a bunch of the Budweiser Super Bowl spots. And the level of strategy and creativity was elite. And so was the grind and the hours. But working amongst those really brilliant minds was exciting at times, but it was also leading to extreme burnout and fatigue. And I realized that once I hit some of my goals, like I was an account director, I was on Google, then I went client side. I'm on the marketing team at Bacardi doing global campaigns, and I'm flying business class around the world, and there's private jets and a company condo in Bermuda, and it's super exciting. And then I was just empty. It was like I had reached this peak of my dreams. I got there, I'm on top of the mountain, and I feel insatiable. Every single time I hit a goal, I was already thinking about the next one. And there was never moments of gratitude or celebration. It was just constant rat race. And that's when I eventually figured out that I need to go a little bit deeper. I need to go inward to find what's going to truly fulfill me. And that led me to San Francisco, which my intuition was telling me I needed more tech experience for some reason. I didn't know why at the time. And San Francisco was really rock bottom for me. I didn't have my New York parties, all of my friends. I didn't have that really glamorous career to kind of fall back on or numb out with. And it forced me to go really deep. It forced me to go inward and listen to my body more, listen to my intuition. And that was a really loud calling to go to Bali and go to a 7-day breathwork retreat that completely changed my life.
Had you ever done breathwork before? Did you know what it was?
I had no idea what breathwork was. I thought it was meditation, which I think a lot of people think are the same, which they're absolutely not. Breathwork is so intense. It's very active. But the words of the retreat really resonated with me in terms of looking for this inner peace and this inner freedom. And so I just kind of followed that gut instinct. And the breathwork was so fascinating. I mean, I came in there thinking I was really self-aware. I was like, I've been in therapy. I've read some personal development books. Like, I understand my patterns and my voids. And the breath work just took me so many layers deeper into my subconscious and to the inner child that needed healing and to the relationships that needed repair. And that's when I was like, okay, I can't go back. I can't go back to marketing and advertising. This whole new world has been opened up to me, and it's so fascinating, and I'm so lit up by it. And I want to figure out how to optimize it and bring it to the world. And that was truly the beginning of discovering my purpose.
So I want to dig into this concept of our purpose. It's a topic that comes up a lot in our community. As you know, you've been around Powerhouse Women for a while. It's a community built around our big dreams and ultimately our purpose. And there's a lot of people who are feeling unsure of what that is. How does our breath, this fundamental thing that is available to all of us, how does that connect to our purpose? I've never really heard you speak on that specifically.
Yeah, it's interesting because, breathwork gets you out of the analytical mind. It gets you out of the societal brainwashing and the cultural conditioning and what your parents told you success looks like. And it allows you to hear your own voice. So physiologically, it's shutting down the prefrontal cortex of the brain, which is the default thought loops. And it's allowing you to go deeper into the subconscious and discover those unfulfilled values and those past memories and to feel into the things that you're so truly innately passionate about. And once you can provoke those curiosities again and start to kind of follow the little breadcrumbs, then it'll start to get louder and louder and you'll be able to connect the dots. Yeah. And so for me, there's a pretty tangible methodology to finding your purpose. I really try to take people through the same process that I went through, which is healing the past, healing those relationships that have taken up a lot of your energy that you don't realize on a subconscious level, and then connecting your skills, your passions, the obstacles you've overcome, and then eventually turning it outward so that it's no longer about the self and it's about how you can contribute to something greater. And that is when you can find so much meaning and so much color and so much fulfillment in your life.
And it starts with the healing part, which is what we started with. You share some really powerful stories in your new book, which we're going to talk about healing your relationships with your parents. Will you tell us a little bit about that journey? And did you go into this breathwork retreat thinking you had work to do around your relationships with your parents?
Definitely not. I went into the retreat and I remember saying to the facilitators, should I live in San Francisco or move back to New York? And should I date this guy or that guy? Yeah. And those were my two surface level external questions that I was battling with in my ego. And they kept telling me, I think you need to go deeper. And I remember on day 3, I believe, they said, I want to explore your relationship to your mom. I said, I have a great relationship with my mom. I have a bunch of daddy issues. I don't need to go into my mom relationship. And they said, I think you do. And it was in that session that I saw my mom, like really for the first time. I saw the sacrifices that she made. She was a Vietnamese refugee. She escaped her country and she really allowed me to have this life full of opportunities. And I completely took it for granted. I had never really thought about life from her perspective before. And in the breathwork session, not only did I see her struggles, not only did I see her working 3 jobs when I was a kid and never complaining and always treating everybody with kindness, I completely missed all of that because I was either so consumed in my, my teenage issues or my relationship with my father that I missed the person who'd always showed up for me. And the compassion and the awareness I felt in that session completely changed my life. It was the most brutal experience I've ever had in terms of just bawling my eyes out. I think my face was purple by the end of it. But I needed to go through that to see her, and it's completely changed our relationship. And it was what made breathwork a mission for me. Because I was like, if I'm someone who thinks I'm really self-aware and I've been in therapy and I didn't think I had any issues with my mom, and I just went through that experience, how many people could I serve by just taking them through something similar?
Okay, connect the dots to how that lines up with the way that breathwork helps us access parts of our brain that are the more unconscious parts, because clearly that the emotional release you experienced showed that there was probably a block there, and it was something so out of your conscious awareness. How does breathwork help us unlock that? And why is that crucial to ultimately stepping into our purpose? Why do we have to unblock that first?
So breathwork always finds the highest emotional charge. That means it goes beyond our conscious mind. And a lot of times the way it works is pay attention to your triggers. What had happened to me that morning of the Bali retreat is I received a message from someone I was dating. I had just, after 3 days of the retreat, I was clear that relationship wasn't going anywhere. I was wasting his time. And I sent him a note and I said, I think we need to move forward. And he wrote back, and I'll never forget this. He said, you've always been full of love, Buddha. And I was like, there's nothing enlightening about how I've treated this man.
Wow.
That is a crazy response that was so accepting and so loving. And it really triggered me because I knew I didn't feel deserving of that response. And so that's when the teachers guided me, like, where does that come from? Where does that reaction come from? And I could journal on it for hours and I wasn't getting to the root of it. But as soon as I started breathing and I asked my subconscious, where is this emotion coming from? And it was the guilt of not seeing your mother. And I was like, whoa, the breath just takes you right there to the emotion that's really been buried.
What does that feel like when you're in that moment? So you went into the breathwork session kind of like, I don't need to work on this relationship. Is it an image? Is it a thought? Like when you really surrender to it, what's that experience? What was it like for you?
It was intense. I was extremely skeptical of breathwork. That's why when so many people say it to me, they're like, I'm really skeptical. I'm like, it's cool. I get it. And now it's been a really fun challenge to see their breakthroughs like 20 minutes later. But I was definitely skeptical, and they just kept cueing me to breathe. And I remember the first thing I saw was an image of Sedona. And I was like, oh, cool. Maybe I'm supposed to take my mom to Sedona. It was like a very vivid picture is all I saw. And then one by one, it was just flashes of her life. It was like the boat she escaped on, and it was her life in the Netherlands, and it was her working 3 jobs. And I just saw almost like a movie picture going on in my head. And then there was words that came with it and messages that came with it. And the emotion that came up from it is something that still rocks me to this day when I think about it. And I was convulsing. I was bawling my eyes out. I was crying so hard. And I just felt love. I felt love for her. I felt, forgiveness for myself for just not knowing and seeing it. And it was just like this whirlwind of emotion and images that really did change my life. And definitely not every breathwork session is that intense. That was the biggest session I've ever had. But they're usually filled with either pictures people see or just an inner knowing that comes through for some people as, their wisdom or messages or letters or a black screen with pictures. So it's different for everybody, and every session is different, but the emotion you release is universal.
Is that the fast track to the healing that we started off talking about? Is, I think, you said the trigger, but then ultimately paying attention to the emotions, specifically the ones that we may resist feeling.
Yeah. It's more important to feel through the emotion. So I know a lot of people, they don't want to open Pandora's box. And I totally get that, because those emotions can feel heavy to deal with. But if you don't feel through them, they will continue to live in your body, in your nervous system, in your subconscious. It will play out in your relationships, in your decision-making, in your career, in your health. So I encourage people to just feel through the emotion, and it starts to dissipate. Once you can get to the source of where it started from, then it will start to dissolve in your body, and you will feel so much freer, and you'll feel so much lighter. It's a bit of an arc in the journey, and you've been through so many sessions with me. It's really meticulously crafted at this point to make sure that people are feeling through the emotional blockage, but we always get them high at the end. They're always feeling super clear and expanded in that next vision. So it has been a bit of a craft to experiment in like the perfect journey. But yeah, it's a difficult feeling, but you'll feel so much better once you've moved through it.
And I'm grateful that you put it in those terms, because I think that can often be another block, is the realization that something is coming up, whether it's in a breathwork session or just in our own lives, and not realizing that everything we want is on the other side of that emotion and fully feeling it. I didn't know that. No one talked to me about that, especially in all of my years studying personal development or going to events and reading books. It wasn't until I started to pair the more somatic with the spiritual and the strategic that things started to move.
Yeah.
And accessing those deeper emotions has been such a huge part of that. Your specific process also involves self-hypnosis, essentially, these powerful prompts that really move you into different states of consciousness, opening up the memories that are going to give us access to our opportunities to heal. So where did you discover the power of combining those two modalities specifically? Because you do it in a unique way that I've never seen done before.
Yeah, after the Bali retreat, I was obviously so fascinated by breathwork that I went to every single class and workshop and training I could find. And I was going all over the world. I was in India, I was in Peru, I was in Thailand. I was attending everything. And I noticed this very common pattern in the sessions, which was people would have a cathartic release and they wouldn't know what to do with it. And I found myself like taking over people's classes and being like helping with integration, like, okay, well, let's connect the dots between your intention and what image came up for you and what are you feeling now? And I just saw that there was this huge opportunity to focus the sessions so that people could connect the dots to what psychological pattern they were healing. So in all of my exploration, I didn't just explore breathwork. I tried all the modalities because I can have a really extreme personality. Like I can go all in on something because I think it's so incredible. And I wanted to really be thorough in my research. So there was plant medicine, there was a 10-day silent Vipassana, there was Ayurveda in India. There was all these different things I tried. But it always came back to breathwork as being the most powerful and most efficient tool. And then I just really loved components of hypnotherapy because I was like, oh, I'm identifying the belief, I'm reprogramming it in real time. And that's really powerful. So how can we combine the breathing with this process simultaneously? Because the HypnoBreathwork sessions would take 60 minutes to 2.5 hours. And I was just like, there's no one in my network that would spend this much time on their personal development. So I started playing with an EEG headband. And I saw that if you do the 2 inhales, 1 exhale, that can drop you into deep theta states in 4 minutes. And deep theta states is how you access the subconscious. That's how you bypass, the critical factor and the analytical thinking. So I was like, okay, if we breathe for 4 minutes, and then I start to bring in these vocal cues. And if they're really thought-provoking, then that could make a really impactful session. But then I also saw that you kind of have to bring content to the surface before you breathe because people come in really guarded and really defensive and not wanting to necessarily break open. And I found that sharing personal stories or being really vulnerable about my own journey or doing journal prompts or just having the community have a discussion around a topic beforehand would already get the subconscious stimulated. So we would add that in the beginning of the session. And then we would breathe, and then we'd add hypnosis. And then I became obsessed with Dr. Joe Dispenza. So I was like, okay, now we can do visioning at the end of this once they're unblocked, and now they'll expand and they'll feel the emotion. And it just became this hyper efficient 22-minute journey that has really allowed people to have those big epiphanies and revelations and breakthroughs.
Which I love that you have the science behind it, showing how it affects the brain waves. And when you mentioned Dr. Joe Dispenza, I was thinking about how when you and I actually attended one of his retreats in Cancun, and I remember coming out of one of the sessions, it was early on in the week because we both finally surrendered into it. And we did these, how long were they? Some of them were like an hour plus
there was
long
one that was
meditations.
4 hours.
Oh yeah, the 4 a.m. one.
Oh my
just
gosh.
Word to the wise. And I remember you walking out and being like, yeah, it was great, but I could do a 22-minute breathwork session and get to the core so much faster.
Yeah.
And this isn't actually
No
to say, no, one is better. But actually, by the end of that week, we both had such profound experiences with meditation. And what I've loved about HypnoBreathwork and using the Mastry app is having it as a tool for those times of my day where I don't have an hour to meditate or go for a walk, which is how I love to regulate my nervous system. There are times, and I remember one specifically, it was last fall, it was in October. It was in the season where I've shared a lot with the community. I was just feeling really called to slow down. And when I slowed down, I actually noticed a lot of emotion coming to the surface. I was not doing as much. My drug of choice was to stay busy and avoid feeling. And I remember I had to get on a call and lead a conversation for one of the groups I was facilitating. And I had so much anger rising to the surface. And I did have about 30 minutes before I wanted and fully had to be as pressure I'm putting on myself, but I wanted to show up and be really present with this group. And I remember taking it into a breathwork session and releasing a lot and releasing a lot of that anger, even just in the 22 minutes, to be able to come back to the call and at least be present in that moment. It wasn't like it cleared what was actually coming up for me in that moment. My voice was a little raspy because I really allowed a lot of that emotion to flow through. But because I had the opportunity to do breathwork sessions personally with you, and I just always remember you saying, imagine yourself wrapping your breath around it and releasing it. And that to date was the most powerful session that I've ever done, because to see how it helped me change my state in less than 30 minutes, when I had to show up in a way that I wanted to show up very differently than how my state was feeling. And in the past, knowing I would have just sat there with that all simmering below the surface, not able to be present with the community that I love to pour into, I was like, wow, this really is the most powerful tool that I've ever had access to. And it's free. It's the breath. Right?
It's wild how quickly it can shift your state.
Yeah.
You said something yesterday that I thought was so beautiful. You're like, my default is just love. And I was like, wow, that is such a stunning quality and stunning feature. Mine is not love. And so for me, this was really something I needed on a daily basis to get out of my ego, my reactivity, my defensiveness, my temper. And I was like, man, in 20 minutes, I can dissolve so much of this suppressed emotion. I can see a higher perspective. I can see another person's point of view. And then I think the most important part of all of our sessions is, what's your next intuitive action step? And then I know how to act from that place, which is the key differentiator in HypnoBreathwork from taking it from that internal experience, but actually creating that external step to change your reality along with your emotional state.
Yeah, I want to talk about that. So it is one of the tenets of your practice is, at the end, you're prompted to connect with what's the intuitive action step you are guided to take. And most often for me, it seems to not be directly related to whatever external goal I have at the moment. It'll be to forgive someone, to apologize to someone, to reach out to someone that I really don't want to reach out to. Talk about the power of intuitive action and how it ties into this bigger conversation of healing, of unblocking our purpose, and ultimately, whether our default is love or not. I think as human beings, our default is connection.
I feel called to tell a story about the intuitive action. So that my mentor, my idol, is Robert Greene.
Yeah.
He's, for anyone who doesn't know, he's the author of 48 Laws of Power, The Laws of Human Nature, which I believe has made me a really good coach. And then I named my company after his book, Mastry. So one morning I see that Robert Greene is going to be speaking in Seattle with Ryan Holiday. And I'm so excited. I go to book a ticket and then I'm like, oh my gosh, I haven't even done my breathwork this morning yet. And I don't do anything before my HypnoBreathwork session. So I go in and I breathe for 20 minutes. And in my breathwork, I see row F. And my cursor was around row G, just right in the center. Row F was meet and greet. I was like, oh my gosh, I almost missed this from being impulsive. Thank God I did breathwork. So it saw row F, I booked the meet and greet. And then there was a couple sessions before the event where I saw what to say during the meet and greet. Breathwork gave me the exact words I needed to say, which were, I'm a massive fan. I named my company after your book. I do breathwork and hypnosis. I would love to collaborate and turn your writing into a subconscious journey. And he said, I walked up to him and I had rehearsed it and I practiced it and I said it so much that I was almost stoic about it that I missed what he had said back to me, which is, I'm really curious about that. And I was just so stunned. I was like, had I not done the breath work to have the meet and greet, that was an intuition to book row F, right? And then it was intuitive to say the thing that I was absolutely petrified of saying to the person that I respect and admire most in the world. And then it got me an opportunity to do breath work with my idol and who has also now endorsed my book. Mm-hmm. Those were intuitive actions that logically I would not have gotten to. I wouldn't have even dreamed of asking Robert Greene or seeing Robert Greene being on the cover of my book. That is not even something I would manifest. But my intuition just had a higher knowing. And by being so clear and breathing every day and getting those little nudges and then acting on them immediately, it's been one of the coolest journeys and most impactful things I've been able to do.
Yeah. And that's my experience too. I'm starting to be able to distinguish when my nervous system is in more of a heightened state versus when I am really in, is it parasympathetic? Is when you're in the rest and digest. All of my best intuitive ideas are there.
Yep.
And here I was over caffeinating, overworking, staying in such a heightened state, and then wondering why certain things just wouldn't connect. But then at other times, I would go for a walk and I would just get this download and I jot it down. And so again, HypnoBreathwork being such a targeted way to help us access those, it's like higher states of consciousness. Can we call it that? Is that really what it is? That's what I want to call it. That's my experience of it.
Absolutely it is.
And in a way that is not something that, how do I want to put this? I think I resisted breathwork for a while because I didn't know what it was. I didn't understand the power. It really wasn't until I met you and you offered a version of it that wasn't weird. It didn't show people writhing on the ground. And, there are big emotional releases, but I think there's a lot of versions of all of these tools that it's about finding the one that really works for you. And I think because you are an entrepreneur, you are the embodiment of the community that I love and the community that we've built here. It's just the fastest way that I've found to access the part of me that I love to operate from.
Yeah, I think what you resonate with is I created this method for peak performance.
Yeah. Yes.
But I think the correlation that a lot of people don't see is you have to heal in order to perform at your highest level. Otherwise, you're wasting energy on emotions and relationships that are no longer serving you instead of on your business, instead of on the right collaborations or acquisition strategies or content ideas or marketing funnels. Breathwork can actually give you so much organization in your thought streams. When you're entering that flow state, it's really important that you have the knowledge and experience and the podcast and the articles and the conversations with mentors and the investor advice, and it will connect the dots in a way that is in alignment with you. And that's the key differentiator, because if you're a high performer, if you're a high achiever, you know how to force yourself to do the work. You know how to hustle and you know how to grind. But there's an easier way when you're in flow and you're in alignment. And I think that intuition is the biggest superpower that you can have in your business. That's when you have nuance. That's when you have originality. That's when you're able to innovate and invent. And so for me, the HypnoBreathwork was really designed to get into that flow state, to operate at your sharpest cognition and decision-making and problem solving. It was just kind of by happenstance that I realized, but you have to heal first to get into those states. And not every session is healing. We both go through periods and phases and we text each other all the time. It's like, oh shit, I'm in another one of these seasons. But then you'll have months where you're just super creative and you're aligned and you're feeling really joyous, and then you're connecting with people and it's helping you grow and scale. And then you're like, oh, I've hit a ceiling. I've hit another layer. It's not to say that the healing work that you've done thus far hasn't been incredible for you and astronomical in who you've become. But there's higher versions of us and there's deeper layers. And I just wanted to create something that I needed and that I know that a lot of other people will benefit from in a way that's accessible.
Yeah. So obviously, when you shared that story, you took the intuitive action. It led to this incredible opportunity. What is your advice to people who are in a session, they get the intuitive action, and then they want to schedule it for next week? You have a very clear directive. Anytime I've done a session with you, or even yesterday in the room with women who have things come up where it's, I need to reach out to this person. I'm going to do that. And you hear it. And every time I've heard you say, don't wait more than 24 hours.
Yeah.
Why is that important? The immediate intuitive action.
Do it immediately. Do it fiercely. Do it unapologetically. When you're out of a breathwork session, you're clear. You're in the energy of your highest self. You're at your highest vibration. And so that intuitive action step, that is your soul telling you this is the next step on that higher path. When you let time pass, your logical mind starts to come in, all the reasons why maybe it's not a good idea, all the discomfort starts to come back in. And then you lose it. And I see people get derailed really fast when they don't take the intuitive action steps. And then I also see people who take them immediately and they do the HypnoBreathwork every day and they take the step immediately after, and their life transforms so rapidly. And all of a sudden they're sending me pictures because they're leading retreats in Greece and they're empowering all these people and they're on these big stages. And I'm like, that's the power of having the courage to do the breathwork daily, to feel through anything uncomfortable that might come up. And honestly, once you start doing after like a week or so, then they just start to feel really good. You're just having a lot of clarity. And when you take the intuitive action step, your whole life will start to change really fast.
And I was just thinking as you were saying that about the compounding effect, especially if you commit to the practice every day and then the immediate intuitive action, then instead of waiting 4 days to take that first action and then go in for the next one, it's the compound of daily intuitive action.
Daily intuitive action, first thing in the morning. You know, we have so much conditioning. So many walls have been built up, so many negative beliefs, so many thoughts that don't serve us. And so when you wake up in the morning and you basically clean the slate for the day and you're really intentional about the vision and the life that you want to create, and then you take action from that place, it sets the tone for the entire day. Even in our relationship, I'm just thinking back when the first podcast was on my calendar, and it was in the season where I was fundraising for my business. And anybody who's gone through the fundraising process knows that it's brutal. It's so extreme. It consumes your mind 24/7. And I remember saying, oh my gosh, I'm pitching right now. I have investor meetings back to back to back. I can't split focus to do this podcast right now. And my intuition was like, no, you need to meet her. And I was like, I don't have time.
We've all been there.
I know, but my logical mind was like, you know, this isn't the right time. But my intuition was like, it is. And meeting you has been so special. Like, it's been so special. You've expanded me in so many ways in terms of building deeper relationships and connections and community. And obviously the opportunities of being at Powerhouse Women has been, this is my purpose, you know, is being able to facilitate sessions like that. So.
It's because my default is love.
I know. I knew you so much.
Well, I didn't know how much I would love you yet, but I definitely felt that same desire to connect and just know you. And I had no idea the impact it would have on not just my life, but to see, I'm getting chills as I say this, so many of the women from our community have gone on to become certified in Mastry HypnoBreathwork specifically, and then to see the ripple effect that they're making in the world. And we're just two girls who decided to follow the intuitive action again and again and again. And it's really special. I mean, that's what my favorite part is of what I'm building is the relationships that I get to form.
Well, it's fun to create with you too, when both people are operating intuitively. You know, like we were exchanging voice notes for the retreat and I'm like, I have a feeling that it needs to be in this order. And you're like, I trust you. And I'm like, let's do it. And and it was so effective yesterday. It was crazy.
It was so beautiful.
It was wild.
So I don't want to just like take this hard left turn, but I'm going to, because I want to talk about love. I want to talk about how you use HypnoBreathwork in your relationship, in your partnership. You are so open about talking about the ups and downs of your beautiful partnership and how that hasn't been your default to be the partner that you want to be. And I'd love to hear about how breathwork has really been a part of that journey for you.
I was not expecting that.
Surprise.
We're a masterpiece in some areas of our life and we're a work in progress in others. And relationships, I'm a hot mess expressed in relationships. I've just never been somebody that valued them. And I was always hyper independent. And that's obviously comes from my daddy issues and those wounds. So meeting Steve, my partner, was divine intervention, definitely. And there's been so much reprogramming that's been done in my nervous system and in my heart and in my mind. And I've done so much work to clear all of the, negative modeling I've seen in my life of what relationships look like and the purpose of them. And I think one of the biggest ones was the fear of abandonment. I've had fear of commitment. I've had fear of being cheated on. I've also feared cheating on people. And so going into breathwork sessions and releasing the source of some of those beliefs and those negative patterns and just honestly contempt for men has obviously been extremely healing and cathartic for me. But he's also been a very secure partner. I think they say you're in like the top 1% if you're fearful and avoidant. You're like extra messed up. So that's what he gets to deal with. But what he loves about me is that I'm willing to do the growth. Like I'm willing to look at my patterns. I'm willing to take accountability. And then I'll obviously do all the HypnoBreathwork sessions and get my coaches to take me through sessions when I'm super blocked or I have a blind spot. And not to say that he's perfect by any means. He's a wonderful man. But the best part about him too is his willingness to grow with me. And when we are in conflict and we cannot see the other person's point of view, we will do a deep HypnoBreathwork session together. And I'm telling you, we can't even look at each other before we go in the session. Like things have gotten ugly. We're really pissed off. There's so much defensiveness coming up. And within 20 minutes, we're cuddling at the end of it and apologizing and in tears and ready to repair. So it has changed my complete world as it comes to relationships. And he's been so valuable for my heart and my healing, but also my business. Because when things are good at home and you have that stability and you have someone who supports you unconditionally, it does allow me to have more creative energy to work. So, yeah.
And as someone who, thank you, first of all, for just sharing so vulnerably that's been one of the biggest areas for you. That consistent work has been the driver behind the relationship that you do have. And you're so open with sharing that it has been a challenging road for you on your social media. It really shows that the places where we do feel that big emotion come up, where most of our triggers come up, we could think all day long, oh, that has nothing to do with my business. But it does. It has everything to do. Every single area of our lives are so interconnected.
I'm a master compartmentalizer. And I used to think it doesn't matter what's going on. I can power focus through this and be like a machine and just get things done. But then when the things aren't moving around you and you stop having momentum, I was like, oh, I guess I'm not a master compartmentalizer. The energy is leaking.
Yep.
And when energy is leaking in one area of your life, it affects all areas of your life. And so sometimes I really think that the love sessions that I do are the most beneficial for my business because he's similar to you in the sense that he makes me feel more, he makes me feel more compassion and more empathy. And those are often the things that aren't as natural to me when I'm thinking about a customer perspective or what people need in a breathwork session. So they're all interconnected.
What would you say to someone, because I can almost hear some of you listening begging me to ask this question, someone who doesn't have the partner who's willing to do the session with them, how can, as an individual, how can we utilize these same tools to bring a different version of us to our partnerships?
You live by example. You lead by the embodiment of your energy. What I've noticed is the more HypnoBreathwork I do, and I just focus on myself and I just work on myself and I focus on evolving and becoming better, it's attractive. People get curious, they get intrigued, And I've seen this with a lot of women that I've worked with. Like they've been doing the HypnoBreathwork for 6 months, and then I get the DM that they're like, oh my God, my partner joined me this morning. Like he loved it. And we had 2 couples at the Bali retreat this year, and it was incredible. And I had no idea when we started the retreat. They ended up telling me on like day 2 or day 3 that both relationships were towards the end. Like they didn't know if they were going to make it. And then when they got, I have full body chills now. And then when they came out of the experience, they'd seen each other again. They connected back to why they fell in love with each other. And, in those instances, those men really stepped up and they were really willing to do the deep work and meet their partner. And it changed everything. So I would say focus on yourself. Do the work that you need to heal, because you'll show up differently in the relationship. You'll listen more actively. You'll be more compassionate. That might change the dynamic on its own. When you're out of your masculine or you're out of that defensive state, that could shift everything. And then it might pique enough curiosity to where they do it with you. And then the connection that you feel and the intimacy that happens, it's a different level. And even if you're not in partnership right now, what I would encourage you to do is, if you want to be, which I loved the single life, so I'm definitely not, trying to push anybody in one direction or the other, but I want to cover my ground. If you do want to be in a relationship, then breathe on what that feels like. Mm-hmm. And it's not the, 6'4" athlete who's super wealthy. Like, don't breathe on that. Breathe on how that good relationship would feel. And it usually feels like safety. It feels supportive. It feels like love. And focus more on the emotion than the type on paper.
We have covered so much ground. We have dating advice. We have marriage advice. We have business advice. And I'm so excited that you now are going to have a book out in the world for people who may not have an opportunity to first interact with you via your app and getting to do breath work. I think a book is such a powerful tool it's going to bring new people into your world who are going to be so impacted by you and your work. So talk to me about the book, Unblock Your Purpose. It comes out, well, we don't know when you're going to hear this episode, but tell us when it comes out and what we can expect inside the pages. Because I got an advance copy and it's so good. And I'm not just saying that because I'm your friend. It's made me think deeper about the healing journey I've already been on. And I'm doing therapy and I'm doing HypnoBreathwork, but the reflections that it's giving me, the opportunity to see deeper into my own inner work have been profound. And I'm about halfway through it.
Oh, amazing. Oh, that makes me so happy. So Unblock Your Purpose comes out on November 26th. And it's actually like an organized stream of what we just discussed.
Yeah.
So part 1 is really about healing the past and those relationships that have shaped our worldview. And then part 2 is about getting into flow state and connecting those creative skills and also debunking the money beliefs and the shadows that allow us to be fully in alignment and living our purpose. And then part 3 is really about supercharging your manifestations. And we do that through intuitive action and then of being of service. So it's really everything that we've discussed today, but maybe in a more chronological order. And then there's HypnoBreathwork sessions that are free that support each chapter so that you can start to explore some of those relationships, some of those emotions, and begin more clear and connect the dots to your purpose.
Oh my God. So genius. It is. What was that experience like writing it?
That book was a spiritual process.
Yeah.
It really was. Yeah. I use HypnoBreathwork to create every component of my business, every retreat, every course. And the book was no different. Words would kind of just stream out of me, the outlined thoughts on a page. But I have a course called Unblock Your Purpose that I started with. And the book was really about talking about those milestones and telling the stories of people who have gone through the journey. And it was organized in a similar way. But I had to breathe through some of my stories to connect back to the emotion. And that was hard, and it was healing, and it was intense, and it was beautiful. So it was definitely a spiritual process. And then, the editing process can be extremely tedious. And so using HypnoBreathwork to connect back to the vision and the impact I wanted to make through my words was what got me through some of those tougher moments too.
Yeah. It's just, again, such a testament to the fact that you are a product of your own work. For people who haven't ever breathed with you, the Mastry app is available anywhere on any mobile platform. Where's the best place for people to connect with you and just get into your world, whether it's the retreats, starting with breathwork, or a copy of the book? Where's the best place that we can support you?
So you can go to my website, that's francescasipma.com, and that talks about all the offers. And again, just feel into your intuition for what resonates with you. But then also on social media at Francesca Sipma, slide into the DMs with any questions you might have, and I'm happy to support.
I'm so excited for people to get this book in their hands. I want to end with a question that I'm sure we've asked on the other episodes we've done together, because it's kind of been a standard, but it'll be cool to hear what you want to celebrate in this season of your life. So it's just to ask you to reflect on a powerhouse moment, anything big or small, but just something that maybe you have just stepped over and kept going, but you didn't take a pause to celebrate yourself for. If I ask, what's a recent powerhouse moment you want to acknowledge right now, what's the first thing that comes to mind intuitively?
The first thing that comes to mind is releasing expectations around this book. I have made a lot of investments in myself in the last year, around $100,000 on writing coach, speaking coach, business strategist, PR. And I think that because I did that and the book is coming out linearly, I'm expecting a certain level of, audience or success. And recently, because I was blocked, I've had to reconcile with that. And now I've just kind of surrendered to this process just being really beautiful and fluid and unpredictable. And in the same way that my breathwork coaching journey has been, I'm going to take that into this next level. And I'm really proud of myself for being able to let go of those expectations and just be in flow.
I'm so proud of you too. And I'm really so grateful to be on this journey with you. You've impacted my life in such a profound way. And anytime I get to share space with you, it's just such a gift. So thanks for being here.
You're making me emotional. Thank you for having me. I love you so much.
She did it.